The circus involving the Texas Democrats who skipped town and went to D.C. so that they could sing "We Shall Overcome" and supposedly defend voting rights in the United States of America.
Deep in our heart, I do believe we will overcome today.
Has turned into a little bit of a three-ring circus now, because several of the people who came up to D.C. have now claimed to have tested positive for the CV, and some staff members of people in D.C. are being tested positive, and it's beginning to look like the same kind of super spreader shenanigans that went on at the end of the Trump administration, remember? And people who just conveniently shouldn't have been in front of cameras kept popping hot for the CV and disappearing. Now, Kamala Harris, who met with these people, she's not quarantining, but all the people that tested positive from Texas are down in Texas quarantining. So I don't know if it's as simple as they still don't want to go do their job, and what better way to avoid not doing your job than getting back and popping hot for the CV. And that wouldn't be a shock to me at all. I've seen people of all different persuasions using the CV as excuses over the past year and a half, and to the nth degree. And it really would line up very well with the fact that these people don't want to come back to work. So it could just be that, or it could be something bigger, and we're kind of watching. It's a matter of watching who's claiming to have popped hot and why, and I'll keep an eye on it, just letting you guys know that. But Peter Doocy and Psaki have been going back and forth, and I've covered a little bit. I did a rant on it the other day, and they had another interaction recently that I want to go over with you guys. Let's get into it.
Speaking of misinformation and the announcement from yesterday, for how long has the administration been spying on people's Facebook profiles looking for vaccine misinformation?
Well, that was quite a loaded and inaccurate question, which I would refute.
How?
Well, Peter, first of all, as you know, we're in a regular touch with a range of media outlets. Let me finish. As we are in regular touch with social media platforms. This is publicly open information. People sharing information online, just as you are all reporting information on your news stations.
So Psaki's assertion here is that it's not spying, right? That's the old go-to, the same thing that they went to with Russiagate. It's not spying. Your terminology I find disgusting, kind of like Fauci yelling at Rand Paul yesterday. It's this hang-up on terminology. And so she's telling you, we're not spying on American citizens. We're just trolling through their public information. It's information that they shared, and so there's no expectation of privacy. That's why it's not spying. That's the assertion she's making. The government watching everybody's Facebook posts is not spying.
Okay, so these 12 people who you have on a list, 12 individuals, do they know that somebody at the Surgeon General's office is going through their profile?
I'm happy to get you the citation of where that comes from. There's no secret list. I will tell you that these are people who are sharing information on public platforms on Facebook, information that is traveling, is inaccurate. Our biggest concern here, and I frankly think it should be your biggest concern, is
here you have the government saying to the press, like, this is what we're worried about, this is what we're focused on, and this is what you need to be focused on. And this isn't the first time that she's going to lambast the guy for being concerned about something different than what the government is focused on, when in reality, the whole system is set up for the press to constantly be hammering on something that the government doesn't want to talk about. It's the whole point of the press. What she's saying here is ludicrous. And she says, oh, there's no secret list. Well, there was a secret list prior to the publication of the article. They had the list. They were talking to social media and they were talking to the press using the list. And then once the list was presented in the news article, now it's no longer a, quote, secret list. So what did Jen Psaki say? There is no secret list. That's her response. Technically, she's right. Again, semantics.
The number of people who are dying around the country because they're getting misinformation that is leading them to not take a vaccine.
Their focus is the number of people dying because they're getting misinformation and they're not taking a jab. This is the most wild claim for somebody to make, and she presents zero proof of this. Nothing.
Young people, old people, kids, children.
Young people, old people, kids, children. Well, I don't know what young goats have to do with anything, but she did say baby goats and children. I don't know. But the whole point that I'm making here is that is a giant claim. She's now claiming that there are children dying because they've received misinformation and not gotten the jab. Completely asinine claims to make. It's so funny when you start talking about the negative aspects of the jab, then they want to tell you, wait, correlation's not causation. There's no proof that happened. Yeah, they dropped dead 24 hours after they got the jab, but that's a this or that error. However, here, she can just make this wild claim that misinformation is filtering to people of all age groups, causing them to not get the jab, and then they're dying from it.
This is all a lot of them are being impacted by misinformation.
The big concern, though, I think,
and that, quote, a lot of them, she had to correct all of them, because what she's saying is a lie. A lot of them were affected by misinformation. Incorrect. There is a small population of people who don't want to get the jab because of misinformation. But the vast majority of the people who are hesitant to it do not cite misinformation. They cite things like the fact that it's still in its experimental phase. They cite things like it's a new technology that hasn't been used before. They cite those things. They cite the actual death rate from the CV in their age group. They cite things like that. Those aren't conspiracy theories or medical misinformation. The claim that everybody who's dying from the CV now, it's all because of the people who put out medical misinformation is absolutely false and a lie. And what they're doing is they're trying to make it as if putting out misinformation is a direct corollary to people dying. And when the government starts trying to do that, it is a very dangerous time period in a country's lifespan.
A lot of people on Facebook is that now this is Big Brother watching you.
They're more concerned about that than people dying across the country because of a pandemic where misinformation is traveling on social media platforms. That feels unlikely to me. If you have the data to back that up, I'm happy to discuss it.
That feels unlikely to me. Here we go again. It's always the feelings. It's always feelings. However, the problem is it is likely. And this is why, because this truly is a this or that error. Because somebody can care that there's thousands of people dying across the country from this and the misinformation around it, and be concerned about the government weaponizing this idea of misinformation and turning it into a way to control and propagate news and facts. This is nothing more than a power grab. It's the same thing the government is always doing, trying to grab more power.
Things that are on Facebook. I looked this morning. There are videos of Dr. Fauci from 2020 before anybody had a vaccine, and he is out there saying there's no reason to be walking around with a mask. So is the administration going to contact Facebook and ask them to take that down?
Well, first, I think what Dr. Fauci has said himself, who's been quite public out there, is that science evolves. And
okay, see how it is. This is how it works. When they do something and it turns out to be a lie or incorrect, it's the evolution of science. But when another scientist or doctor, because make no mistake about it, the 12 people that are putting out, quote, all the misinformation in the world, blah, 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 they're doctors. They're not just nobodies. So when another doctor puts out an alternative theory, that's misinformation. What Fauci did earlier, that's the evolution of science. But isn't it funny that some of these people who they're accusing of, quote, putting out medical misinformation were ahead of the science? Now the science has evolved to understand it could possibly have come from a lab. Now the science has evolved to understand about masks. Now the science has evolved to understand a lot of things that these people that are, quote, being accused of misinformation now had right a year ago. So once again, we have a double standard. The standard that the government is holding itself to. Yeah, we've said incorrect things. We do a lot, actually. But, science evolves. And the standard that citizens are being held to, even though they're credentialed and can speak in that field intelligently, if they put out something that turns out to be incorrect, it's medical misinformation. And there's people being prosecuted for medical misinformation right now, guys. The Department of Justice is releasing these charges where they're charging people for making claims regarding the CV. This is the slipperiest of all slopes. What we're talking about here is ceding the power to the government to determine what is and isn't a fact. The way that we've done that contractually in society for as long as anybody knows is the idea comes out, it's debated, it's attacked, it fights, it wins, it becomes a fact. But when you have a giant institution that is stifling dissent and alternative theories and calling anything that doesn't go with their current narrative, because it could not match their previous narrative, but if it doesn't match their current narrative, you're going to be stifled, silenced, and attacked. It's dangerous, you guys. It's extremely dangerous. And it's being done by an administration who is equating people who put out medical misinformation, doctors who might be wrong or right, as murderers. They're responsible for all the deaths.
Information evolves, and we make that available in a public way to the American people.
Exactly.
I have never seen any data to suggest that that the vaccines cause infertility. That is.
And then here we go. And see, this is what is so difficult, because the claim that she's making, there isn't enough science to make that claim yet. There's some data, but there's not enough data. The annoying thing about all of this is that she has not presented one iota of evidence to prove that there is a direct correlation between the misinformation that has and has not come out about the CV and about people not getting the jab. And even if there's a correlation between people not getting the jab and dying, because if you go look at the numbers in Israel, go look at the numbers in the United Kingdom. I mean, I started this episode talking out about these 5 people from Texas that went up there, and they're now being called a super spreader event. Those people are all jabbed. They've all been jabbed. The people that brought it up there, the people who are testing positive in DC, they're all jabbed. So it's like, you want to make Jen Psaki, you know what, prove that there's a correlation even between that. More or less prove that there's a correlation between medical misinformation and vaccine hesitancy, because the vast majority of people who are hesitant now were hesitant a year ago. They're using this in one last way to really establish the government narrative above and beyond all narratives. And the danger of that is that it takes so much longer for somebody who has the truth to get it to the people. The truth will get there, but it takes far too long to break through the daddy narrative from government. That's why the lab leak theory didn't make the rumbles that it should. That's why the things happening over November of last year are taking as long as they are. Because the truth is at such a disadvantage in a system where the government is established to stifle the truth at every turn. And they're using this to do it more.
Information that is irresponsibly traveling. Okay,
Just one more. Sorry, excuse me. Just one more. Okay, about the science evolving. Facebook used to block people from posting that COVID may have originated for a lab. That is something this president now admits is a possibility. So, is there any concern that things you are trying to block or have taken down might someday turn out to be?
We don't take anything down. We don't block anything. Facebook and any private sector company makes decisions about what information should be on their platform.
Wow. And here's the hilarity about this. For a decade, this is what NPCs have told to everybody who has experienced the censorship that's been going on. They're private companies. They can do whatever they want. Okay. Psaki really shouldn't have used that here, because she's in the government. She's telling us they're telling private companies who to censor. She's telling us they're working with Facebook. And then she says, well, we don't take anything down. We don't block anybody. Facebook blocks people. They're a private company. But that's fascism. This is like the announcement. We're working with Facebook and we're not getting in trouble because Facebook's doing all the censoring. Don't come to me with any First Amendment nonsense because Facebook is doing the censoring. That's like, don't come to me with any nonsense about your Second Amendment rights because it's Cabela's confiscating all of your guns, not the government. Yes, we're telling Cabela's who to confiscate guns from and why, but they're doing the confiscation, guys, not us. Your Second Amendment rights are intact. Don't come to me talking about Fourth Amendment rights, okay? Because we're not searching your house. We're paying Roto-Rooter to spy on you every time they go to your house and work on plumbing. And yes, we tell them who to spy on and why, but they're spying, not us. We're not doing it. Your Fourth Amendment is intact. It is an insane inversion of reality. And the fact that she can sit here and say that is disgusting.
We don't take anything down. We don't block anything. Facebook and any private sector company makes decisions about what information should be on their platform. Our point is that there is information that is leading to people not taking the vaccine, and people are dying as a result. And we have a responsibility as a public health matter to raise that issue. The responsibility we all have, the government, media, platforms, public messengers, to give accurate information.
There you go, guys. I feel like this is my second video on this topic. It's really concerning, especially when you look at the governments of Cyprus, the government of France, Singapore, Russia, Malaysia, China, all of these countries that have expanded their totalitarian control. We're all saying the same things that our government is currently saying now. And so that leads me to believe that an escalation is coming, and a narrative as to why it's back and who is responsible for it being back. Even though I recently came across an article that said it wasn't even MAGA who is predominantly jab hesitant. One of my listeners made a comment the other day and said, you know, I'm a liberal and I'm not getting that thing. And I know that, and I knew that, but I thought that it was perhaps the majority of it was MAGA. And I have to admit that in my mind, I think it was a lot of bias. I'm ingesting the media, and it's just over and over and over again, you know, the people who are resisting, and I am geared to make sure that I don't let that affect my judgment. But I think in this particular case it did. And I think there's a high possibility that maybe if you take the people who are hesitant as a whole, the political landscape is probably no different than if you just take a sample from anywhere in the country. Just as possible. I still, from my personal experience, do know that it is a large swath. But again, because of the manipulation in the media, it's hard to even know how many people are really even MAGA, though. It's almost impossible to know with, you know, the insane numbers that came out in November. It's hard to know. Anyways, guys, like, share, subscribe to the channel. I love y'all. Catch y'all next time. Peace.